All right, man, peace. So, as most of you brothers know who follow basketball and who watched Game 1 of the 2018 NBA Finals, there was a bit of a skirmish near the end of overtime in which Tristan Thompson decided that he was going to very aggressively close out one of the Golden State Warriors bench players, that being Shaun Livingston, while he was taking a jump shot, because supposedly Shaun Livingston was infracting on one of the quote-unquote unwritten rules of basketball, that being that if you're up by more than 2 possessions with around 15 seconds or less left in the game, you're basically just supposed to hold the basketball, not do anything, even if the shot clock is about to expire. Well, of course, many of the Warriors players took umbrage to Tristan Thompson and the way that he was getting extremely upset after he was tossed out of the game by one of the referees. He decided that he was going to try to up the ante by trying to challenge Draymond Green to a fist fight, both on the floor or in the tunnel. And of course, Kevin Love, who himself was upset because Tristan Thompson was tossed out of the game, started to wander onto the basketball court. He was on the bench at the time. Why is that a major issue? Because a little over 20 years ago, the NBA passed a rule that stated that if you wandered onto the court off the bench during an altercation or skirmish, you were going to be suspended, and that there would be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it has impacted various playoff series in a major way over the last 2+ decades. I remember when I was in high school, the New York Knicks were in the second round of the playoffs against the Miami Heat. They were actually up 3-1. And in Game 5 in Miami, there was a major altercation in which P.J. Brown and Charlie Ward were battling to rebound a free throw, and P.J. Brown got upset and basically picked Charlie Ward up and threw him into the crowd. Started a major fight. Well, many of the more prominent members of the New York Knicks got up off the bench and came out onto the floor because, for those of you who don't know, during the mid-90s, there was a very, very fevered rivalry between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks for a myriad of reasons. First reason being that the former New York Knicks head coach, Pat Riley, had left New York to go coach in Miami. Also, one of the more prominent players on the Miami Heat was Alonzo Mourning, who had a major beef with one of the more prominent players on the New York Knicks, that being Larry Johnson. And then, of course, when you involve Charles Oakley, Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and a lot of the many other hotheads associated with both teams, it would oftentimes lead to altercations on the floor. Well, to make a long story short, many of the more prominent players of New York Knicks wandered onto the court, and they got suspended for games 6 and 7 in that series. And it led to the Miami Heat coming back to win that series in 7 games and going on to play the Chicago Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals, where they got eliminated in 5 games. Should have got swept. But I think that Michael Jordan, after Game 3, decided that he was going to run out into the streets of Miami and, play around with the little thotties out there, because he had no legs in Game 4. For those of you who don't know, just as an aside, Michael Jordan started out Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat 2 for 21. And then he got blazing hot in the fourth quarter, but that's neither here nor there. Point being is this. One thing that I will give Mr. Adam Silver, the current commissioner of the NBA, over former Commissioner David Stern, is that he understands the importance of timing. Right now, the rapport between the NBA brass and its players is far less contentious than it was in the 80s or 90s. And beyond that, Adam Silver is extremely liberal, and he believes in working with the players as opposed to cracking the whip all the time. When David Stern was commissioner, he had no fear of cracking the whip. He did not care who you were at all. At best, he may help you concoct a cover story, but you were going to get suspended if he felt like you needed to, or if he felt like there was the potentiality that you were going to sully the NBA. He helped clean up the league in the mid-'80s. Point being is this. Adam Silver has decided that Kevin Love is not going to be suspended for Game 2, and I think that he made the right decision, because there's a difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And you should always have a little bit of wiggle room. It's obvious that Kevin Love had no intention of getting involved in the physical skirmish, but his ass should have been on the bench. I think that if this was a regular season issue, I think that he would have been suspended. But seeing as it's the NBA Finals, it's the NBA's major showcase, You already have a dynamic where LeBron James is the underdog. You want to make it seem fair. You're not going to suspend Kevin Love, especially when it seems as if Tristan Thompson may have been kicked out of the game for nebulous reasons. I myself don't really have too much of a problem with it because it was obvious to me that he was very aggressively closing out on Shaun Livingston, and the referee was trying to stop any shenanigans from carrying over into Game 2. Well, anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, so we got to get to some business first because Kevin Love stepped on the court slightly during that Tristan Thompson incident. If you look at the footage, and this is what Kevin actually told me after the game, first of all, he's already kind of on the court during the play. Then he is upset at the call on Tristan Thompson.
Right.
So now he starts walking toward the official.
Right.
He's not even looking at the scuffle developing. He's talking to the official. He's walking that way. As soon as the pushing and shoving breaks out, he walks back to the bench. You, I know, suffered through in your time with the Phoenix Suns a leaving the bench incident, and so this is very near and dear to you. How are you feeling today, hearing that Kevin Love will not be suspended for that?
Look at how Robert Horry just body checked Steve Nash. That shit was crazy. But beyond that, let me say this. Kevin Love, number one, had no business on the court. But even if he wants to say, well, the game was almost over, you started to walk out onto the court as the skirmish was developing. Once again, the only reason why I think that it's okay for him to not be suspended is because it would provide a major eyesore if he were not to be allowed to play in Game 2 over a situation that did not develop into something major. And he appeared to be just an objective observer.
Pardon me while I, this is the play, by the way, of
I hate when they do this shit. When they flash back to a game from 10 years ago and they purposefully make the flashback look real fuzzy. Like, this is 2005. This wasn't George Mikan playing for the Minneapolis Lakers in 1954. Why don't they just show it in HD? There's no version of this game where the broadcast was this muddied and this cloudy. Like, this is so damn stupid. They do this on purpose. Just show the damn HD version.
Just for people who are young and don't remember this happening, so give a 10-second.
We were putting a beat down on the Spurs. Robert Horry caught feelings because the two-time MVP was doing it to him, and so he did a dirty thing, and then the league did it. But before I address this, I gotta pull out my soapbox.
Oh boy.
Here. Just a little bit. So this is my thing. Should Kevin Love be suspended today? Absolutely. By the letter of the law, the same letter of the law that they suspended C.J. McCollum earlier this season, the same letter of the law that took two of our best players out of the rotation for a playoff game against the Spurs opponent that we had finally felt like we had vanquished.
Didn't you feel like that was unjust in the moment?
Yes, and so
just because you got mugged, you want your neighbor down the street to get mugged too?
No. So
Let me say this very quickly. Those are two different commissioners. That's why I noted the difference in ideologies in regards to the commissioners. David Stern was stone cold. He didn't give a shit. He was going to suspend you. He was going to remove you. He didn't give a shit who you were. Adam Silver is different. And I think that they need to take a look at the verbiage of that rule at the end of this season so that they don't get caught in between a rock and a hard place hereafter.
This is what I want. This is what I want. So someone asked me, Danny, our producer said, so what, you just want him to get suspended no matter what? I said, no. He can not be suspended if Adam Silver gets on a podium and says, this rule is dumb and it has hurt good teams in the past and we're done enforcing this rule in a dumb way. Kevin Love won't be suspended. If that's your message, Adam Silver, and I need you to say it verbatim like that, to let people know it's a dumb rule that was unfairly enforced against good teams in the past, not naming names, just saying good teams in the past got hurt by the stupid enforcement of a stupid rule, then I'm fine with Kevin Love playing. But let's just say that, Kevin Love gonna play, he didn't do anything? Nah. Soapbox says he's gotta get suspended.
Let me say this. I have no problem with Amin Elhassan's stance because it's consistent. The only reason why I have no problem with it, once again, is because I understand why Adam Silver is letting Kevin Love play. He's going by the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. But I agree, after this season, they should change the verbiage to allow themselves a little bit more wriggle room to avoid a lot of this silly shit.
And y'all wonder why I love my boy. People don't like the truth, Rach, but people have been suspended for less. Way less.
I agree.
So I don't care if it's Kevin Love. I don't care if it's whoever it is. He has to go by the same rules. First of all, he shouldn't have been on the court anyway.
I agree with that as well.
You know, so, but like I say, Rach, I got to stand on how I really feel. People have been suspended for less. So why not suspend them?
Boris Diaw went to help his fallen teammate, not fight anybody. He went to help a fallen teammate. Kevin Love out arguing with refs. Why are you on the floor, Kevin Love? That's a technical foul at least.
I agree with that as well. But the game was over. I mean, look, I have no problem either way. But purely from a business perspective, it's bad for the league for them to suspend Kevin Love. They're already having a hard time selling this series as being something that can be elongated or is going to go more than 5 games. They want to maintain some type of competitive aspect. I mean, it is what it is. Either way, I just understand where Adam Silver's coming from a business perspective and from an entertainment value perspective.
I understand all the feelings. I really do.
I would understand Amin's passion a little bit more if David Stern was still the commissioner, because then we could establish precedent. We would really need to establish some type of precedent from Adam Silver suspending players for coming off the bench in a very important playoff or NBA Finals matchup for anyone to say, you know what, Kevin Love must be suspended because this is what has been done in this same situation under Adam Silver.
And I think I look back at that Suns incident and I think it's ridiculous what happened to the team. There's no question about it. I agree with you also, Stack, that people have been suspended for less, but you could say that in almost any discipline incident the league has, right?
Right, you're right.
So there's a million reasons guys have been suspended for less. That's what makes it sort of a flexible sliding scale. What I will say here, and the reason why I think the NBA is making the distinction, is the rule is both meant to, and even I believe in the language, about leaving the bench for an altercation. He left the bench well before the altercation. Hold on. I let your feelings out. Let me say my point, which is that he left the bench before the altercation. He was doing something else when the altercation broke out. He went back toward the bench. And yes, there's no question he should not have been on the floor anyway. But if we are calling it that, if we are suspended for that, first of all, I mean, I don't want to name names, but Eric Spoelstra for the Heat should be suspended for every game that he coaches because he's running out all over the floor. There's about a half a dozen coaches that are in that same respect. In this game...
Right, but this is about altercations. This is not about coaches leaving the coaching area and things of that nature. Let's make sure that we maintain the proper context.
Game alone, I'm sure we could go back to the footage and find guys from the bench wandering onto the floor to argue calls, to yell at teammates, to yell at officials. If they did...
But is this during altercations, Rachel Nichols?
He determined that is what Kevin Love was doing. I think that is why the rule is being applied differently, because they don't think that he was doing the thing that your guys got suspended for.
Players, you heard that. You heard it here first. Wander on the court before the fight starts. That way when the fight starts, you're fine. You're already there. You're already there.
Or be Kevin Love.
Or be Kevin Love.
And by the way, it is a dumb rule, and I agree with you. It should be changed.
I just want to hear him say it. It's a dumb rule. We're changing it.
Right. Well,
I don't think that it's necessarily a dumb rule. I just think that they have to provide themselves some wiggle room. If I remember correctly, and if I'm wrong about this, one of you brothers out there can correct me. I believe that the NBA instituted that rule because of what happened between Greg Anthony and the Phoenix Suns, where there was that major brawl where Greg Anthony was wearing that ugly-ass shirt and he was fighting with Kevin Johnson, and all hell broke loose back in like 93. I think it started between Doc Rivers and Kevin Johnson, and then Greg Anthony ran out on the floor. Like, it was just a big melee, big-ass brawl. And everybody ran out onto the court, and I think that that's what incited the NBA to pass that rule. But if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me about that.
Application midway through all of a sudden. That's the not unfair part.
Right. And and look, the competition committee, maybe they'll look at it now. I don't know. I do not expect Adam Silver to stand on your soapbox and say it's a dumb rule, but you never know.
Okay.
But anyway, that's pretty much it on that. We'll see what happens for the remainder of this series. I myself am happy that Kevin Love is playing. Why is that? So that should Cleveland lose, LeBron will not be able to use that as an excuse, because we know that he and his fans love to provide excuses whenever he loses. It is what it is. Peace.